Who is the best car accident attorney in Houston? My name is Attorney Brian White, and I've been doing car accident cases for like 20 years. I'm board certified, but here's the answer. Sometimes people might get along better with certain kinds of people. So you want to be sure that you hire someone who has experience in handling those arguments. And you're going to be trying to tell people about how you were hurt on April the 4th.
Welcome to the Brian White Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey, welcome back to the Brian White Podcast, where we have taken a break, and I'm going to be asked questions from three lovely people off camera. Who is the best car accident attorney in Houston? Well, there are many good attorneys to choose from. My name is Attorney Brian White, and I've been doing car accident cases for like 20 years. I'm board certified, but here's the answer, is that a lot of times the best attorney is based upon the relationship with the client. So sometimes people might get along better with certain kinds of people. And also think about it. If you have an attorney that you like, what is that going to look like in the courtroom if both you guys like each other? So if you're hiring a person who you think is a jerk, most likely that's going to come across in the courtroom like there's some kind of problem. And if there's some kind of problem there, maybe it's really a problem with the case. So, the best attorney is one that not only has the ability, but it's a person that you feel like you could like. Who is the most handsome, or I should say, who is the best looking personal injury lawyer in Houston, Texas? Well, I did a satire video on this several years ago, and my video got like over 10 million views, but it was shared like 80,000 times. And on some of those accounts, there were 1 million views. I don't know how many views that this thing got. But, I was for some period of time known as the best looking personal injury lawyer in Houston, Texas. I think I've been overtaken. And the reason why is because I'm now in my 50s. So I think I'm actually retired from that role. Now I just need to, worry about continuing to make a bunch of money for my clients. If you're in a car wreck, don't take the first settlement offer. I mean, who does that? Obviously, they're going to start off low, and you need to start off high. Don't say, I would be happy with, and then tell them your number. You need to tell them like 3x your number, or maybe even 6x your number. And then you keep going back and forth with them until they tell you that there's no more money. And then when they tell you that there's no more money, you say, well, that's too bad because, I would take that plus, whatever it is, and see if you can squeeze them even more, if that's an amount of money that you would take. If it's not, then what you need to do is hire me. I will come in and I will extract the maximum amount possible on your case. What should you do if you're in a motorcycle crash in Houston? Guys, it's very important to hire an attorney that does motorcycle cases. You'll see billboards out there. It's like, law something animal on it. Guys, it doesn't have a firm on there. If you hire those people, you have no freaking clue who's actually going to get that case. That's just a marketing company. Be smart. Hire someone who actually handles motorcycle crash cases. The reason why you have to have a person who actually handles these is because a lot of times the public will try to put the blame onto the motorcycle unfairly. So you want to be sure that you hire someone who has experience in handling those arguments. If they're met with that argument for the first time on your case, then you may be the person that they learn how to not do that argument. So be sure and hire someone who actually handles those cases. You can hire me, Attorney Brian White. If you're in a motorcycle crash, can you recover compensation even if you were not wearing a helmet? The answer is yes. However, the fact that you were not wearing a helmet will come into evidence and will be used against you to reduce the value of your case. Therefore, if you hire an attorney, they should understand this and be sure and account for it and hopefully increase the value of your case. I've been handling car wreck cases for many years. We do a whole bunch of car and also motorcycle crash cases. So your question is, what happens if you are in a crash with a motorcycle and it's the motorcycle's fault. So you're in a car and a motorcycle hits your car. It happens. We get these calls actually every month where we have someone who is a passenger or a driver of a car that's injured because they were hit by a motorcycle. Now, one of the complicating parts of that is a lot of times the person that's on the motorcycle obviously is hurt even worse, or killed. So it's a very, sensitive situation. But obviously you want to make sure that the motorcycle has liability coverage, which everyone is supposed to have, but it seems like a big percentage of motorcycles don't. So if they don't have any coverage, then you'd have to look at your own policy to see if you have uninsured motorist coverage. And just keep in mind that if you do actually use your uninsured motorist coverage, it's not like you're putting it on your policy. I'm not making a claim on my policy. It's insurance that you've paid for to cover someone else. So if you're a motorcycle rider and you're in a crash, but it's not your fault, then what you should do is call attorney Brian White. In motorcycle crashes, a lot of times the driver of a car will claim that they never saw the motorcycle. And there's actually some scientific, evidence that people will not perceive an object that they're not anticipating. So if you're on the road and you're keeping an eye out for cars, and then suddenly a motorcycle appears, it's an object that you weren't anticipating. It takes about 1.5 seconds to actually perceive it. So that process could mean that by the time that they perceived what you were, the crash has already happened. So while they technically saw you, and if they think about it retroactively, they'll understand that you were a motorcycle. So they cannot be like, I didn't see you. But what they're trying to say is that they didn't, perceive you. They didn't perceive that you were an object until it was too late. Does that mean that they're not at fault? Absolutely not. You still have to keep a proper lookout, which includes keeping a space or any kind of distance that is accounting for more than 1.5 seconds. I believe that there is some stereotype about motorcycle riders being reckless. But here in Houston, it's not quite as bad as it is in other places. And the reason why is because per capita, we don't have as many motorcycles as a lot of cities. I don't know if you've seen this, but there's just not as many. And in fact, it's actually coming down every year. You see less and less people riding motorcycles. And I believe it's because of the way that the city is. Our city is a huge, sprawling system of very busy roads. And as opposed to cities where you see a whole bunch of motorcycles, they're usually more compact. So usually if you're getting onto a motorcycle and that's what you plan to use in order to do whatever you have to do with your day, you're probably not planning to ride 20 miles. You're probably planning to ride 6 blocks. So here in Houston, I don't think the bias against motorcycles is as much as it is in other places where, for example, you're on the freeway and you have a whole bunch of motorcycles zipping through traffic, or you're standstill and they'll go by you and even hit your mirror, whatever like that. But we don't have that. But you still have, sort of, a perception of, you chose to get onto this thing, which is kind of dangerous. So therefore it's kind of your fault. And that's really more sort of the bias that people seem to show. And that can be overcome pretty easily. If you have slipped and fell in a grocery store or on any other premises, you can file a claim and you can be compensated for your injuries. However, you have to have proof that there was some kind of a dangerous substance or condition that caused you to fall. So I know it's hard, but if you fall, you've got to get a picture or some kind of video or have a witness to say that there was something present that caused it. You can't, fall at a grocery store and then a week later say, I don't know what caused me to fall, but the fact that I fell means that there was something there. Therefore, I'm entitled to compensation. No, you have to prove your case. So you would have to have evidence. So if you're in a slip and fall in a grocery store or on any other premises, be proactive, get a picture of the evidence. If you slipped in a grocery store on a strawberry that fell, that's the question. Would that be a case? Well, this is actually the fact pattern of cases that the Supreme Court of Texas was reacting to when they made our entire system of premises liability very hard to recover for. People think that you can, go into the, like the grocery store, slip on a piece of fruit and get paid money. Unfortunately, that is not the way that it is. That hasn't been the case in 20 years because apparently there were a bunch of people going into grocery stores, like slipping on stuff all over the place and trying to sue the grocery store. Now what you have to prove is that the grocery store failed to warn and that they had either actual or constructive notice of that piece of fruit that's on the floor and had time to do something about it. So actual notice is kind of hard because you'd actually have to have a manager say, yeah, I knew it was there 30 minutes ago and I just decided to leave it there. That doesn't happen. So usually what it is constructive notice. So if a person is injured from slipping on a piece of fruit, you have to prove that they knew or that they should have known if they were acting in a reasonable way, which means that you have to show how long that the piece of fruit was on the floor. You can't just say that there's a piece of fruit on the floor. You have to quantify how long was that piece of fruit on the floor. And in order to figure out if it was reasonable for the owner of the property to perform an inspection in that period of time and to fix or to warn people, which means that if you fall on a piece of fruit in the grocery store, in order to recover, you have to say how long the fruit was there. And so we ask people all the time, I don't know how long it was there. And you're like, well, I mean, do you know if there was a camera that maybe captured this? Because we could get it from there, which, by the way, if it did, they're going to get rid of the video. Or, are there like footsteps that are going through it? You see like that appears like it's been there all day long or something like that. I don't know. But so if your answers are, I don't know on those kinds of questions, typically you won't have a case. The question is, if you're hurt at a premises, how do you prevent the retailer from getting rid of the video that shows what happened? And guys, this is tough. So if you hire an attorney, what we do is we immediately serve them with what's called a spoliation letter. And basically it says that we know that you have this and you are instructed to hold on to it. And then if they get rid of the evidence, then you can get an instruction from a judge saying that they had the responsibility to hold on to it, but they didn't. And as a result of that, you can infer that there was something on that they didn't want you to see. But of course, with every rule, there's always sub-rules. So in order for a spoliation letter to actually work, there's all kinds of requirements. And then also, even if it's a good spoliation letter, you have to prove certain things in order to be in the position to have the judge give that instruction. So it's getting harder and harder. It isn't like you can just send a letter and then you automatically get an instruction from a judge saying that they must have been hiding something. It isn't quite that easy. How often do big companies and stores, retailers falsify logs or put information in their inspection or in their incident report that is false? All the time. Guys, they're in the business to make money. And what they absolutely hate is to give away money on claims. A lot of these stores, they have insurance, but they have to pay the first part of the claim. Okay, so from $1 up to $100,000 or whatever it is, it's from their own money. And the way that it works typically with these stores is each of these stores has their own set of books. And so you have a manager of that store that is bonused based upon his profitability, his or hers. And so they have a lot of reasons to falsify things, and it happens all the time. What is the worst thing that a person can say to a store manager after slipping? Look, if you're in an accident at a store, then what you need to do is just act like a normal person. It's okay for you to document what happened, but you're also not trying to build a case. You're not going to try to start some kind of adversarial kind of situation with the store. You're just basically going to get some video and some maybe pictures of what happened and get the information to speak to them. But you're not going to be uncooperative or rude or weird or anything like that. So it's true that we don't take on small cases that don't make any money. We're able to pick and choose good cases. So if it's just like a small slip and fall where you got a bruise, we're not going to take that case. I think most attorneys won't take that case because it'll cost more just to handle that case than what you could make on it. But if it's an injury that's a bad injury, and sometimes just from falling, you could have a head injury, you can have a spine injury, those kinds of things, then those are cases that we will take, and we can really do a good job on increasing the amount of money that the person actually gets for their pocket. If you're in a car accident, here are the 3 things that you should do. Number 1, the very first thing that you should do is take video of the other car, starting with the license plate. The reason why you do that is in case they take off, you want to have identification of the car. Number 2 is to to call the police so that you can get a crash report. The crash report is going to be a key piece of evidence that you need in the case. If you're in a situation where it's word versus word, that isn't always in your favor. And the third thing that you should do is you should be careful what you say at the scene. Sometimes the officer will ask you, "Are you okay?" And you may mean, "I'm still here, but I'm having pain, I'm okay." But if you just say, "I am okay," then what happens is that the officer will write that you have no injuries. So if you're feeling pain in your body and you're asked if you're okay, be sure and specify, "Well, I'm having some pain in my back." One thing that insurance companies hope that you never learn, which is that hiring an attorney will increase the amount of money that you get for your pocket. A lot of people think that if they handle the claim on their own and save the fees that they pay to an attorney, that they're going to end up getting more money that way. Well, that is not true. When you hire an attorney, you're going to get at least 3 times more for your pocket, and many times a whole lot more. Sometimes we have cases where people tried to handle it on their own, and then they mess up the case and they get a rejection of their claim altogether. And then we get the case and we have to try to repair the case. Sometimes that happens where we will settle a case for 7 figures where the insurance company rejected the claim because the person messed it up before they hired us. Social media will hurt your car wreck case. In so many situations, people are in car wrecks and they're hurt, but they continue to post on social media because they're addicted to it. And even if it's a post where it's just a picture of you standing there, where it doesn't show if you're hurt or if you're not hurt, people are going to see that and infer that you're not hurt. Because remember, there's a lot of people who can't even stand, or they don't really look as good as you, and now you have a picture, even though you're hurt, that looks better than them. So when they see that in the courtroom, they're going to be like, no. So social media is the worst thing that you can do for your case. The question is, if you're in a car accident, should the attorney instruct the client to delete social media posts from that day, or that might in some way be relevant to the day in question, or something about how they were acting? And there's actually some cases on this where attorneys have done that, and insurance companies found out about it, and they were able to get an instruction from the judge saying that that there was social media, or that there were posts that were posted before this. After the crash, the person took them down, and you can infer whatever you want to about that. It's a hard call, because you kind of just want to hope that there's nothing stupid on their social media, and then you even more want to make sure that they don't continue to post things after the accident and while you represent them. So sometimes people will be in a bad accident where they're hurt, but they just want to post on social media. So we'll tell them, just don't post anything with you in it. Post your food, post the sky or things like that, but don't post you. There's a subset of people who cannot do that. They get more value out of the attention they get from their post than potentially the money that they might get out here in the future that they're not even sure if they're going to get. So I guess they kind of do the calculation in their head at that moment is, am I going to get more enjoyment out of posting this picture of, me in a bikini or whatever they're doing right now, as opposed to, money in a year from now? They're going to go with the bikini pic almost every single time. That's what I've learned. And so you can tell them about this. You can tell them about how it's going to be terrible for you. You're going to be in a courtroom, and you're going to be trying to tell people about how you were hurt on April the 4th. And they're going to see a picture of you in a bikini on April the 15th. And it's just not going to be good for you. Guys, they still post the bikinis. That's just the way it is these days. And so and for years, we would just get incensed about it. And we'd call them up here for meetings. We'd talk to them. We'd send them the emails telling them blah, blah, blah. And they still would not do it. They would still keep posting. After a while, as an attorney, you have to see that, well, this is a pattern. These people, you can make a choice. You can fire them because they're just hurting themselves, or you can keep them as a client and try to deal with the situation as a bad fact. And every case has good and bad facts. This one is very frustrating because it's one that they bring on themselves, and one that you warn them about, but they still do it. But in some cases, it's possible to keep the case and to make an argument about, how the bikini picture doesn't show an injury, how, what they had to do just in order to get this picture or whatever. All of it is ridiculous. It shouldn't have to be there, but that's what the situation is. Thank you for listening to the Brian White Podcast, where if you're in a crash, you'll know who to hire. You'll know that I'm board certified. Only 5% of attorneys in the state of Texas are even board certified. But also, this podcast is sort of like meant for clips. It's not really meant for people to listen all the way through. So you have to sort of like be an obsessed person if you actually listen to this thing the whole way through. And if you're that person, like of the maybe 10 or 12 people that have watched this whole thing all the way through, then I just wanted to say one thing: I love you. So remember, if you're in a crash, need a lawyer, do it right, call Brian White.
Thanks for tuning into the Brian White Podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit that notification button so you don't miss an episode.